Ryan Buckner, Chief Knowledge Officer here at Schellman, and I'm joined once again with a very close friend and colleague. He's also one of our subject matter experts in the healthcare practice, and he is the practice leader for healthcare. Doug Caney, welcome again. All right. Had a couple questions for you, and I know you stay pretty busy, so really just wanted to pick your brain on a few matters related to HIPAA assessments. Now, they come in different stripes, shapes, sizes, the whole 9 yards. You were talking a little bit a moment ago about OCR. What exactly is an OCR audit, and how do we do it here at Schellman?
Yeah, so the OCR is who carries out HIPAA enforcement actions.
Okay.
And so they actually have a predefined audit protocol that if you ever had a breach or if you were ever selected for an OCR audit, they randomly select organizations, typically covered entities, every once in a while business associates.
Got it.
And they follow this protocol step by step. So they make it public, so you'll know it's an open playbook. So you know what they're going to ask for and how they're going to ask for it. So that's something that when we're doing our HIPAA assessments, because the requirements are so broad, we take that into account. It helps our clients then know, okay, well, if they're going to ask for this, we need to make sure we somewhat consider this in the control that we then put in place to meet.
So if the OCR has an audit protocol, why do organizations need us to perform these assessments? I mean, this has been around since '96.
Yeah.
So do we even need to do these audits? Or?
Yeah. Well, hopefully they never have to go through an OCR audit protocol or audit, but essentially the reason they're doing it is to, if they're a business associate, a lot of times they're doing it to have some external deliverable to provide to their covered entity or a business associate if they're kind of a business associate down the
So that's where we come in. We
That's
help
where we
them with
come
that
in.
deliverable.
We can show them, because otherwise it's just them saying, hey, we're HIPAA compliant.
That's right.
And if that's the case, then they might have a covered entity that wants to do their own audit of them to get comfort. Because the covered entity is responsible for performing procedures to ensure their business associates are HIPAA compliant. So
now you've been with the firm over 15 years, working in this space. How did you start with HIPAA assessments?
Yeah. A number of years ago, pretty shortly after the Omnibus rule came out, which before the Omnibus rule, the fines and enforcement actions for HIPAA did not apply to business associates. So a lot of our clients are service providers.
That's right.
So I think a lot of them just kind of were, got used to that. Well, it's the covered entity's responsibility.
That's right.
And I was working at a client who, said, well, we don't sign BAAs, even though it's clear that we are one. So HIPAA doesn't apply to us.
Okay.
And it triggered something where I'm like, I need to look into this more.
That's right.
And it was just, it really opened my eyes to, especially a lack of understanding at that time from the service providers, how important this is. Like, you're now on the hook for these fines. If you have a breach, that's the kind of thing that you end up on the OCR wall of shame on their website.
Got it.
Can take, can end your business.
That's right.
And so it was something that, I felt the need to really take up just, based on that and
no kidding.
Experience. Yeah.
The OCR wall of shame. What's probably the number one thing an organization can do that puts them on that wall?
Yeah. Well, over 90% of the OCR enforcement actions call out an insufficient risk management and analysis process.
Got it.
And HIPAA's been around since 1996. So how do you have a security rule?
That's right.
That was made in 1996.
That's right.
And the reason is it's broad by design, and it's everything is supposed to flow from that risk analysis. So if there's a requirement around encryption, what type of encryption you use, I mean, it's not going to tell you that. 1996 is very different than now, but it's going to, what did you look at? And the OCR actually calls out 9 essential elements. They're on their website to consider. And a lot of organizations have a strong risk analysis process, but they don't pull in looking at it from the lens of the HIPAA requirements.
That's right.
So by not doing that, when there's some kind of breach, they might say, oh, there was an unencrypted laptop. That's one issue. But wait, where in your risk analysis did you consider that it would be okay to have an unencrypted laptop?
That's
issue two.
That's very interesting that you mentioned that, because I've encountered enough organizations, I imagine you have as well. Perhaps they've gone through PCI or ISO 27001 certification, SOC 2. Seems like everyone gets a SOC 2 these days. And so it's very easy for an organization to be so control focused. Yep. I'm going to encrypt this. I'm going to, put multi-factor authentication here and do those sorts of things. But sometimes it's difficult to have organizations take that step back and say, hey, well, why?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? And that's where the risk management comes from.
And that's where even when organizations, I get the question a lot of, well, we do say high trust. Does that mean that I'm automatically HIPAA compliant.
Yeah,
And
that would make sense, right?
it helps, but what you still need to do is that risk analysis part.
Got it.
Because you can still then say, okay, well, based on all these things, this high trust requirement is correct for me. And that is what I'm using. But you need to make that linkage. Without that linkage,
That's right.
it's just mapping things over and you're not considering it from the risk analysis
And
side.
I think there's some things that the government has done to facilitate that effort. I think there's an SRA tool that's available online. And one of my most recent HIPAA assessment that I performed, they had the client had no awareness of that SRA tool. And so not surprisingly, the risk assessment was the material deficiency in the assessment.
Exactly. And while there are 9 elements that the OCR calls out, they're broad. So the organization, it still has a lot of flexibility in how they end up doing it.
Yeah.
They just need to consider those aspects and document. And then the other thing that commonly gets missed is you do that. Do you do it annually? Do you do it? What gets missed a lot is if there's a major change to an environment.
That's right.
Do you then assess risk at that point? What's the trigger? What if you made that change 2 months into the year?
That's right.
You're not going to look at any of the added risk to that until 10 months after that.
That's right.
That's where you can have those gaps where, breaches can occur and you don't have that you considered those additional types of risk.
It's like there's real work involved with the management of the information system. And risk management is just part of that, one of the core foundational.
There's multiple enforcement actions that call out how there was some change and the organization didn't reassess risk. And because of that, something got exploited.
That's right.
And that's one thing, but also then them not, doing that actively.
So it also sounds like it's more than just an exercise, a check the box, hey, we do a risk assessment. It's got some real meaning. It needs to be an intentional and purposeful set of processes to say, hey, let's look at our landscape. Let's analyze the risk. Let's assess the likelihood and the impact of the thing that we don't want to happening. And then let's put in those mitigating, those safeguards in place. So it seems as though that if you really spend the time and energy through risk management on the front end, a lot of your questions on what to do, when and where become answered as a result of that.
And also just really defining what triggers needing another look. What type of is it? Because there's changes that happen all the time. And if they're minor and they don't impact the greater, risk landscape.
That's right.
But if you're moving from being on-prem to the cloud or something like that, how do you define that? And how is it clear then that this is an event that triggers us needing to reassess risk? I think that gets missed a lot of times.
All right. So risk assessment. Make sure that you don't miss that. But what do you need to actually do in order to guarantee success? Now, these are dangerous words I'm throwing at you. I'm going to put you on the spot. What is the one greatest success strategy that you would recommend or explain to anyone thinking about undergoing a HIPAA assessment?
Yeah, I always go back to management commitment. If you're going to go through an assessment, not only from getting through the assessment and having the resources to provide us audit evidence and all that.
That's right.
But also the commitment that HIPAA is a regulation. This is something that can put us out of business if we have a major breach. And while you might be able to show the auditors this today, if I don't feel like management is taking it serious, and after that, maybe we stop doing security awareness training or things like that, really enforcing to the whole organization that this is important and this could put us on the wall of shame. And so without putting it in the forefront like that, a lot of organizations could just look at it like, oh, this is another thing we get audited once a year on, like SOC. It's different than having an exception in SOC.
That's right. So it's not about having that executive sponsorship and support just for the sake of having a good, smooth audit. It's really foundational to compliance and making sure that we are in fact complying with a federal regulation. And so that executive sponsorship primarily serves the business and secondarily serves the compliance effort.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah,
Excellent.
It's just, you can't look at it the same way you look at your SOC 2 or your PCI. I know they're all important for you as a business.
That's right.
But this is a regulation.
That's right.
And you can have very high fines from not being in compliance with it.
Well, awesome. Really appreciate your time, Doug, as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So I want to thank Doug Caney again for spending some time with us to talk to us about the truth behind some of the most concerning aspects of the HIPAA assessment. If you have any questions related to not only HIPAA, But anything in the healthcare space or beyond, whether it's ISO, FedRAMP, PCI, or other compliance objectives, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll be sure to answer any additional questions or concerns you may have. Thanks so much.